So now that we have touched base on some of the harder abstract topics that we can come across as researchers, let's address some of the elephants in the room about genealogy research myths. These stories can pop up when interviewing family, could litter our childhood memories of family story, or even come across in local history or family history books. So commercial and TV programs can lead the unpracticed to believe that they can accomplish everything from home, that everything's online. And if you see some ancestry.com commercials, that everything can happen with about 3 clicks. I'm sorry to say that that is not true. And half the time you show up to classes or workshops, a lot of professionals are covering what websites offer and tips to find more within their catalogs or websites of websites. True, but it isn't all there. And today we're going to talk about how to think beyond that and where to find things beyond that, not just the tricks of the different websites. Digitizing records is also extremely expensive and time consuming to do and maintain. We don't always have those resources. And this bleeds into the next point about online resources. A lot of people are expanding their trees, but we can't trust that they know what someone is doing. We have to be skeptical always. Sometimes people are just copying other research, and those mistakes just snowball. So unless you see extensive records, real records, to support those relationships, leave the works of others alone, and don't continue the snowball into an avalanche of misinformation. You'll hear people say their ancestors' names were changed to Ellis Island or some other major port. This simply just isn't true. So if you hear someone say this, back it up with why it isn't, so that they learn. Passenger lists were created at the port of departure, not arrival. So Ellis Island workers just simply checked the names off. They had nothing to do with the names themselves. So if your family name changed after they arrived to Ellis Island or to the US, it was probably due to them changing their own name, assimilating to a new culture, some language barriers of someone not understanding what their name was for a different record set, or some other change that they decided to take. For instance, people with German ancestry at the outbreak of World War I and World War II would often change their name to be sounding more English-like to combat prejudice. So your family has always told you that your great-grandma's grandmother was a Cherokee Indian princess with her long black hair and high cheekbones. This is probably the most common claim in US genealogy. You might have Native American ancestry, but this story is so common, you have to follow the paper trails to back this up. 99.99% of people who learn the story, they learn it's false no matter how much they believed it. As Native Americans were forcibly removed from their lands, it created a vacuum of misunderstanding of their culture and turned ideas to pure fiction. In the Midwest, we call this the donut hole. People just started creating stories. You can take a DNA test to test this story out for your family, but I will tell you it won't be very conclusive. There's a lot of variables with this, and also in Cherokee culture, there are no princesses. So why is it always Cherokee? Of all the federally recognized tribes, Cherokee is the most populous, and their reach spread further than some of the other tribes at the length of time of European contact to forced removal, genocide, and forced assimilation. Cherokee tribes have some of the more relaxed rules around enrollment, and it is arguably one of the more recognized tribal names. So there have been courthouse fires and census destruction and church fires that destroy records, but it doesn't mean that everything is gone. It means you have to get a little creative. The 1890 US federal census was largely destroyed from a fire and consequent water damage in the mid-1900s in DC. Same thing happened to World War II Army records. Some of those do still exist, so don't write it off and still search and see where they are and ask for anything available. But you can also look at what you know might have been collected on the 1890 census and look to other records to try and fill in that hole. Just because it's not available to you doesn't mean you can't necessarily find other information to fill in that gap. And this last one of the three immigrant brothers has a lot of parts, but mainly because you have the same last name as someone does not mean you're automatically related. I think this myth kind of goes in line with some biblical stories of how populations were spread. However, historically speaking, that type of patterning just didn't exist coming into the United States. The last name Smiths, they piled into New England, Virginia, and the southern colonies all around the same time.